So this is a lesson on evolutionary preferences of eating disorders, and this is a PowerPoint we used in class. So we started with the idea then that we have taste receptors on the tongue. I don't think I'm shocking anyone by saying that we have taste receptors on the tongue. And as you can see here, the idea is when we eat food, the food is dissolved in saliva and broken down into molecules which combine with our taste receptors. So the idea is we have these taste receptors actually for a good reason. So just have a look at the 3 different types I've listed here, and there's actually many more. We have bitter taste receptors, and this is useful for identifying plants and chemicals that might be poisonous. Now, nowadays we don't really need to do that because we buy our food packaged and we don't generally get sold food that's going to be poisonous. If we go to Tesco's, we're pretty trustworthy the food is going to be what it says it is and it's not going to kill us. But for 9 million years, for 9.5 million years, in actual fact, humans and everything we've evolved from, we can only go by trying the food and being able to use our taste receptors to tell us if they were going to be poisonous or not. Or if you look at the sour taste receptors, we needed for 9.5 million years, we had to have these taste receptors that would be able to tell us if the food had gone off and may contain harmful bacteria. Quite simply, those early humans that didn't have these taste receptors and weren't able to tell if food had gone off and might contain harmful bacteria or might be poisonous, they'd die off. The ones that did have such taste receptors, they would survive, they'd mate, their offspring would have these taste receptors, and so on and so on. So that's why we have these taste receptors today. So that was the first thing. Went on to have a think about the environment of evolutionary adaptation, EEA for short. And this refers to a place where species first developed. So for humans, this was, some say 2 million years ago, some will say 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 million years ago. It's where humans first developed in the African savannah, and we lived as hunter-gatherers. Okay, and we lived like this for at least 2 million years, if not more million years. There's a very small picture, it's probably not quite being able to work out what it is, but anyway. And in this place where we first developed and where humans lived for 2 million years, so 99% of the time that humans have been on this earth, we lived like this. And we lived in a place where there was a really tough environment and food was scarce. So basically our food preferences have evolved because for 2 million years it was really advantageous to do the following. So for 2 million years it would have been really advantageous to basically to eat as much meat as possible because we were going to survive that way. If we tried to eat as many plants as possible, we'd not as likely to survive, we're more likely to get attacked by other predators. Think of fatty foods versus non-fatty foods. Again, for 2 million years, it was really advantageous to eat as fatty foods as possible and to binge eat as much as possible. There was no point to eat selectively because we didn't know if we might go days or weeks or months without being able to eat again. So we just wanted to get as much food as possible and as fatty food as possible, as many calories in there. So that was it. For 2 million years, it was in our interest to eat fatty, calorific foods. And unfortunately today, we've still got that preferences around. And obviously, in today's society, it's not so good for us. But that's why we've got these preferences to eat really fatty foods. This is the next theory then, that by MacArthur and Bianca, is the optimal foraging theory, very similar to what we just spoke about. The idea is that animals aim to maximise their energy intake, their calories, while spending the least amount of time and effort doing so. So early humans would have gone around eating plants and vegetables, but to do so you would have to be out and spend hours and hours to get enough to try and survive. But for humans, animals' brains to develop, this is what they have to do: eat meat. So the optimal foraging theory suggests we started to eat meat because it was going to give us our maximum amount of calories for the least amount of time and effort in doing so. We have evidence for both of these. It comes from Stanford. Now, obviously, we can't go back into the evolution adaptiveness, so this is the next best thing. And what he did was he observed chimpanzees, so where we've evolved from, obviously, and they found that sometimes they can go a long time without food, just like early mankind would have done. So what they do is when they do manage to kill, they would normally go straight for the fattiest parts rather than the more nutritious, tastier flesh parts. So it's really good evidence here that when early humans and when chimpanzees these days, if they go a while without food, what they want is the most calorific food they can possibly find. So that's the PowerPoint we went through, and what you've got then is a nice bit of AO1 and then a bit of AO2 to back it up at the end, and Stanford's research. What we then would have gone on to look at, bear with me, is this handout. Okay, so this is a handout I gave out in class. Nice little picture handout, so I'll email this as well. So it's a nice little recap basically, tiny bit of evaluation as well. And then this handout is a nice little kind of takes you through it as well. And this just kind of explains it and puts in some different words from the textbook as well. So I'll email both these sheets out as part of the lesson plan. And then as well, part of the lesson, this is one of our key studies. I don't know how well this will show up, but Gibson and Wardle, so a massively important study, this provided evidence to support the importance of calories in an ancestral diet. It showed the best way to predict which fruit and veg would be preferred by 4 and 5-year-olds was not in terms of how sweet they were, nor how much protein they contained, or if familiar, but how dense they were in calories. In other words, the more calories they have, the more kids like them. So basically, kids tend to choose bananas and potatoes because they are particularly calorie rich and were more likely to be chosen. Okay, so that's the first bit of detail. The other key thing you need to know is, let me find the right stuff that I want. Okay, this is the other part of the textbook. Okay, so we've done all about the environment of evolutionary adaptation, done about the preference for meat. There's extra little bits there as well. This is the other major thing. Okay, so taste aversion, bait shyness and taste aversion. Key study by Garcia here. If you have a read for all of this yourselves, and this is basically showing about classical conditioning. So basically, humans have developed that if they try something which is going to make them ill, then we've evolved to avoid that food again in the future. And again, those humans who tried something, made them ill, then they went back to it for some more, they're fooled, they would die off, their genes don't survive. Those humans that try something, makes them ill, and they learn from that, they're the ones that survive. So we've got this instinct in us, if we eat something and it makes us ill, we start avoiding it. And that's called taste aversion as well. And finally, the final thing I say here, there's some really good research, hopefully my mouse cursor comes up, that can actually show this taste aversion in the real world, which is by Bernstein and Webster, which I'll let you have a look at. That's a really good real-life application of this. Okay, and that is going to take you through then the evolution of eating.